In the early afternoon, under the harsh, blazing sun of the Persian Gulf, the USS Tempest, a Cyclone-class coastal patrol ship of the United States Navy, moved steadily across crystal-clear international waters. Measuring just over 50 meters in length and carrying a crew of 28 sailors, the Tempest was designed for speed, coastal security, and defensive operations rather than large-scale combat. On this day, however, its mission carried extraordinary importance. The ship was escorting a seemingly ordinary civilian cargo vessel bound for Bahrain, but appearances were deceiving. Hidden deep within the cargo holds was highly classified U.S. electronic intelligence equipment valued at approximately $300 million. Advanced surveillance and signal processing systems intended to strengthen the operational capabilities of the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters stationed in the region. The success of this mission was critical, not only financially but strategically, as the technology aboard the cargo vessel played a key role in maintaining situational awareness and regional security in one of the world's most volatile waterways. The Persian Gulf itself is a narrow, intense maritime corridor where international commerce, military presence, and geopolitical rivalries constantly intersect. Every day, oil tankers, commercial ships, and naval vessels from multiple nations pass through its waters, making freedom of navigation a core concern for global stability. The United States Navy maintains a continuous presence in the region to safeguard shipping lanes and deter hostile actions, particularly from Iran, whose Revolutionary Guard Navy frequently conduct aggressive maneuvers designed to test American responses without crossing the threshold into open conflict. Against this backdrop, the USS Tempest and its escorted cargo vessel sailed along a well-established international shipping route, fully compliant with maritime law, and well outside Iranian territorial waters. As the ships advanced toward Bahrain, Iranian coastal radar installations began tracking their movement. Such monitoring was not unusual, as Iranian forces routinely observed U.S. naval activity in the Gulf. What raised concern, however, was a sudden increase in Iranian radio chatter detected by American signals intelligence systems. Communications between Iranian Revolutionary Guard fast attack boat units and their naval command indicated heightened interest in the Tempest and the civilian vessel it was protecting. Specific phrases suggesting a valuable cargo and a potential boarding opportunity hinted that the situation was moving beyond routine harassment into something far more deliberate and dangerous. Soon after, 8 Iranian Revolutionary Guard fast attack boats departed from their base and accelerated toward the American ships at high speed. These vessels were small, agile, and heavily armed for their size, typically equipped with machine guns, rockets, and boarding teams trained for close-quarters operations. Operating in tight formation, the Iranian boats approached aggressively, a classic tactic intended to intimidate and overwhelm smaller patrol ships. As they closed a distance, Iranian radio operators initiated direct communication with the USS Tempest, issuing orders in English. They falsely claimed that the American vessels were operating inside Iranian territorial waters and demanded that the ships immediately stop their engines and prepare for inspection. This claim was entirely fabricated. The USS Tempest was navigating through internationally recognized waters, exercising lawful passage rights under international maritime law. The demand to halt and submit to inspection was not a legitimate law enforcement action, but a calculated provocation. By asserting false territorial authority, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard sought to create a pretext for boarding the vessels, seizing classified cargo, and detaining the American crew. Such an act would have represented a major propaganda victory for Iran, allowing it to publicly humiliate the United States while gaining access to highly sensitive military technology. From the American perspective, the intent behind the Iranian maneuver was becoming increasingly clear. This was not a spontaneous encounter or a routine show of force. It was a planned interception. The speed, coordination, and number of Iranian boats involved indicated prior intelligence and preparation. The Revolutionary Guard appeared confident that the USS Tempest, as a small coastal patrol ship, would be unable to resist a coordinated boarding attempt. They likely believed that numerical superiority alone would compel compliance or allow them to overwhelm the crew before external assistance could arrive. Despite the mounting pressure, the commanding officer of the USS Tempest maintained strict adherence to protocol. The ship responded firmly over the radio, rejecting Iran's claims and reiterating that the vessels were operating legally in international waters. The message was clear and unambiguous. The Iranian boats were not authorized to approach, inspect, or board, and they were ordered to maintain a safe distance. At the same time, the American crew prepared for the possibility that words alone would not be enough to stop what was unfolding. As the Iranian boats continued to close in, their aggressive posture, combined with the false legal claims and the strategic importance of the cargo, signaled that the situation was on the verge of turning violent. What began as a sensitive escort mission was rapidly evolving into a direct confrontation, one that would test not only the resolve of a single U.S. Navy patrol ship, but the broader American commitment to freedom of navigation and deterrence in the Persian Gulf. Despite multiple clear warnings from a USS Tempest that it was operating lawfully in international waters, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard fast attack boats showed no intention of disengaging. Instead of slowing or altering course, the 8 boats continued to close the distance at high speed, their aggressive intent unmistakable. Crew members aboard the Tempest could now clearly see armed Iranian personnel standing on deck, weapons slung across their chests, with boarding ladders, grappling hooks, and ropes openly displayed. This was no longer a case of maritime harassment or radio intimidation. The Iranian boats were actively preparing to seize the American ship and its escorted cargo. From the Iranian perspective, the situation appeared decisively in their favor. The USS Tempest was a small coastal patrol ship, lightly armored and designed primarily for defensive operations near shorelines. Against it stood 8 fast attack craft, each capable of swarming tactics and rapid boarding maneuvers. Iranian commanders believed sheer numbers and aggression would overwhelm the American crew before meaningful resistance could be organized. They assumed that the Tempest was isolated, unsupported, and vulnerable, an easy target that could be boarded quickly and exploited for strategic and propaganda gains. What they did not know was that this assumption was dangerously flawed. Unbeknownst to the Iranian forces, the USS Tempest had already taken decisive action the moment the encounter escalated beyond routine maneuvering. An encrypted distress signal had been transmitted across U.S. naval networks throughout the Persian Gulf. This signal instantly alerted nearby American warships, aircraft, and command centers that a hostile boarding attempt was imminent against a U.S. Navy vessel carrying classified cargo. Within moments, U.S. forces across the region began mobilizing, racing toward the confrontation at maximum speed. However, for the crew aboard the Tempest, those reinforcements were still minutes away, and the immediate threat had to be handled alone. As the Iranian boats closed near point-blank range, their intentions became undeniable. Engines roared as they maneuvered into positions alongside the Tempest, attempting to box it in and limit its ability to maneuver. One Iranian boat pulled dangerously close to the starboard side, while another moved toward the port, coordinating their approach to launch boarding teams simultaneously. Grappling hooks were thrown, clanging against the American ship's hull, and a ladder was raised toward the deck. Iranian personnel began climbing, weapons in hand, attempting to force their way aboard the USS Tempest. At that moment, the confrontation crossed a critical threshold. What had been an aggressive standoff instantly became an act of direct hostility. The commanding officer of the USS Tempest ordered his crew to repel boarders using all necessary defensive force. U.S. sailors, trained extensively for close-quarters combat and ship defense, responded without hesitation. Small arms fire erupted as American sailors fired controlled, defensive bursts at the boarding personnel, targeting those attempting to climb aboard. At such close range, the engagement was intense and chaotic, with little room for error. Several Iranian boarders were hit and fell back onto their own vessel, disrupting the initial boarding attempt. However, the remaining Iranian boats continued pressing forward, convinced that persistence would overwhelm the American defenders. For a brief moment, the USS Tempest appeared dangerously outnumbered, surrounded by hostile forces intent on seizing the ship and its valuable cargo. Then, in a sudden and dramatic shift, the balance of power changed entirely. The civilian cargo vessel escorting the Tempest, until now appearing passive and unarmed, revealed its true purpose. Hatches on its deck swung open, and 12 U.S. Navy SEALs emerged in full combat gear. Armed with M4 carbines, sniper rifles, and grenade launchers, the elite operators quickly took up firing positions. These SEALs had been embedded aboard the cargo ship precisely for this scenario, a covert defensive measure designed to protect the classified intelligence equipment from capture under any circumstances. The appearance of the Navy SEALs caught the Iranian forces completely off guard. What they believed was a vulnerable civilian ship suddenly became a lethal combat platform. The SEALs immediately issued a final warning, identifying themselves and ordering the Iranian boats to disengage and withdraw. The message was unmistakable. Any continued attempt to board or attack would be met with overwhelming lethal force. When the Iranian boats failed to comply, the SEALs acted. Precision fire erupted as SEAL snipers targeted Iranian boat operators and crew members with clinical accuracy. Drivers were hit, engines faltered, and boats began losing control, veering off course or slowing abruptly. Unlike the chaotic exchanges of small arms fire moments earlier, this phase of engagement was methodical and devastating. Each shot was deliberate, designed to neutralize the threat as efficiently as possible. Within seconds, the Iranian boarding attempt collapsed. Boats that had moments earlier surged forward now struggled to maneuver, their crews wounded, disorganized, or attempting to retreat. The coordinated defense by the USS Tempest crew and the embedded Navy SEAL team had stopped the attack at close range, denying Iran an objective and buying precious time for American reinforcements racing toward the scene. What Iranian commanders had believed would be a swift and humiliating victory had instead turned into a tactical disaster. Their miscalculation, underestimating American preparedness and resolve, had not only failed to secure the cargo, but had triggered a chain of events that would escalate far beyond a single boarding attempt. The confrontation had reached a point of no return, and the consequences for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy were about to become far more severe. As the close-range firefight unfolded on the surface of the Persian Gulf, the confrontation rapidly escalated beyond the immediate control of the vessels involved. The sound of approaching aircraft soon cut through the chaos. At low altitude and high speed, U.S. Navy MH-60 Seahawk helicopters arrived overhead, their rotors thundering as they took up tactical positions above the USS Tempest and the cargo vessel. These helicopters, launched from nearby U.S. Navy destroyers, were heavily armed with Hellfire missiles, precision-guided weapons, and door-mounted machine guns. Their arrival marked a decisive shift in the balance of power and signaled that the incident had reached a level that demanded immediate and overwhelming force. From loudspeakers mounted on the helicopters, clear and authoritative warnings were broadcast toward the Iranian boats below. The message was direct and unmistakable. Iranian Revolutionary Guard vessels were ordered to disengage immediately, withdraw from the area, and cease all hostile actions. The warnings emphasized that the Iranian boats were being targeted by U.S. naval aviation assets and that additional American forces, including fighter aircraft, were inbound. This was the final opportunity for Iranian commanders on the scene to break off the engagement and avoid catastrophic consequences. For a brief moment, hesitation appeared among the Iranian boats. Crews looked upward, confronted by the unmistakable presence of U.S. attack helicopters hovering just above them, weapons visibly trained on their positions. Some boats began to slow, and a few appeared to angle away as if reconsidering their actions. The situation teetered on the edge of de-escalation, with the outcome hinging on a single decision. That decision came swiftly and disastrously. One Iranian fast attack boat commander chose to escalate rather than retreat, in a reckless act that would seal the fate of his entire force. He fired a shoulder-launched missile toward one of the MH-60 helicopters. The projectile streaked through the air, narrowly missing its target by a matter of meters before plunging into the sea. Though the helicopter was unharmed, the implications were immediate and irreversible. This was no longer an attempted boarding or localized skirmish. Iranian forces had fired directly at U.S. aircraft. At that instant, the rules of engagement were fully and unquestionably met. The command to engage was issued without delay. U.S. Navy helicopters responded with overwhelming precision and speed. Hellfire missiles were launched in rapid succession, each locking onto its designated target with deadly accuracy. Within seconds, multiple Iranian boats were struck. Explosions ripped through their hulls, sending fire, debris, and fuel skyward. Boats disintegrated almost instantly, their crews eliminated before they could react or escape. As the helicopters executed their attack runs, another wave of American firepower arrived overhead. F/A 18 Super Hornet fighter jets, launched earlier from a nearby aircraft carrier, screamed into the area at supersonic speed. The sudden sonic booms echoed across the water, leaving no doubt that the full might of U.S. naval aviation had arrived. The jets quickly identified remaining Iranian boats attempting to flee the engagement zone at high speed. There was no escape. The Super Hornets released anti-ship munitions with devastating effect. The remaining Iranian fast attack boats were obliterated in quick succession, reduced to burning wreckage scattered across the sea. The entire engagement, from the moment the missile was fired to the destruction of the last Iranian vessel, lasted only a few minutes. What had begun as an attempted boarding operation ended as a complete annihilation of the attacking force. In total, all 8 Iranian Revolutionary Guard fast attack boats were destroyed. The losses on the Iranian side were catastrophic, with dozens of personnel killed and no vessels remaining capable of continuing the operation. In contrast, the American outcome stood in stark contrast to the Iranian disaster. The USS Tempest, though marked by the intensity of the firefight, remained operational. The damage it sustained was limited and non-critical, allowing it to maintain station and continue protecting the cargo vessel. A small number of American sailors suffered injuries, but none were life-threatening, and all received immediate medical attention. The civilian cargo vessel at the center of the confrontation emerged completely unharmed. The classified intelligence equipment remained secure, untouched by Iranian forces. The Navy SEAL team embedded aboard the ship suffered no casualties and maintained full combat readiness throughout the engagement. Their presence had played a critical role in stopping the boarding attempt long enough for air support to arrive. From a tactical perspective, the engagement represented a textbook demonstration of layered U.S. naval defense. Surface ship resistance, embedded special operations forces, rotary wing aviation, and fixed-wing strike aircraft all worked in rapid coordination to defeat a numerically superior adversary. From a strategic standpoint, the incident sent an unmistakable message. Any attempt to seize American vessels or interfere with U.S. operations in international waters will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. As the smoke drifted across the Persian Gulf and burning debris marked the sites where Iranian boats once operated, it became clear that this was no isolated clash. The destruction of the 8 fast attack boats was only the opening phase of a much larger response. Iranian commanders had not merely failed in their objective. They had crossed a red line, and the consequences of that decision were about to extend far beyond the waters where the USS Tempest now sailed, intact and victorious. In the immediate aftermath of the naval engagement, as smoke still lingered above the Persian Gulf and burning debris drifted across the water, senior U.S. naval leadership began assessing the broader implications of what had occurred. At U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, real-time battle footage, radar data, and communications transcripts were reviewed within minutes. The conclusion was swift and unanimous. This incident went far beyond routine harassment or an isolated clash at sea. Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces had attempted an illegal boarding of a U.S. Navy vessel in international waters, fired upon American aircraft, and sought to seize classified military cargo. Fifth Fleet leadership formally classified the action as an act of piracy and a direct armed attack against the United States. With that determination made, the response shifted from tactical defense to strategic prevention. Admiral commanding the Fifth Fleet concluded that allowing Iranian Revolutionary Guard naval forces to retain the capability to repeat such actions would invite future attacks, embolden further escalation, and endanger both U.S. personnel and international shipping. The objective was no longer simply protect the USS Tempest and its cargo, but to permanently neutralize Iran's ability to conduct similar operations in the region. Authorization was requested and quickly granted for follow-on offensive operations against Iranian Revolutionary Guard naval infrastructure across the sector. Within minutes, U.S. Navy destroyers positioned in the Gulf began preparing for precision strike operations. Their vertical launch systems were loaded with Tomahawk cruise missiles, weapons specifically designed to strike high-value targets with extreme accuracy from long range. Targeting packages were rapidly finalized, prioritizing Iranian Revolutionary Guard naval bases, command headquarters, radar installations, ammunition depots, fuel storage facilities, and docked vessels believed to be capable of supporting fast attack operations. These sites formed the backbone of Iran's ability to threaten maritime traffic in the Persian Gulf. The first wave of cruise missiles was launched in coordinated salvos, streaking toward the Iranian coastline at high subsonic speed. Almost simultaneously, U.S. naval aviation assets were retasked. F/A-18 Super Hornet squadrons received updated strike orders directing them toward Iranian ports and coastal facilities. Their mission was clear: prevent any Revolutionary Guard vessels from escaping port, reinforce missile strikes with air-delivered munitions, and ensure complete suppression of Iranian naval command and control in the area. As the cruise missiles reached their targets, the scale of destruction became evident. Iranian Revolutionary Guard naval headquarters suffered direct hits, collapsing command buildings and killing senior leadership personnel. Communication centers were obliterated, severing encrypted links between naval units and regional command. Radar installations along the coast were systematically destroyed, blinding Iranian forces to further incoming threats and eliminating their ability to track U.S. or Allied ships and aircraft. Secondary explosions erupted as ammunition depots detonated, sending massive fireballs into the sky and triggering chain reactions across nearby facilities. Fuel storage tanks ignited, producing thick black smoke visible from miles away. Dry docks and maintenance facilities were reduced to rubble, destroying vessels undergoing repairs before they could ever return to service. Dock patrol boats, missile craft, and support vessels were struck repeatedly, sinking at their berths or breaking apart under the force of precision-guided munitions. Meanwhile, U.S. aircraft maintained air dominance along the Iranian coast. Any Revolutionary Guard vessel attempting to leave port was immediately targeted and destroyed. The combination of cruise missile strikes and sustained air attacks left no opportunity for organized resistance or recovery. Iranian air defenses, already limited, were overwhelmed and rendered ineffective within minutes of the first impacts. The tempo of the operation was relentless. Within a span of just 52 minutes from the initial boarding attempt against the USS Tempest, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy's operational capability in the sector was effectively eliminated. Dozens of vessels were destroyed, multiple naval bases were rendered inoperable, and the regional command structure ceased to function. Surviving personnel were left without leadership, communications, or usable infrastructure. The message was unmistakable. Iran no longer possessed a means to challenge U.S. naval operations in that area of the Persian Gulf. In stark contrast, the American outcome remained overwhelmingly positive. The USS Tempest stayed afloat and operational throughout the entire crisis, sustaining only minor damage. The crew performed with discipline and professionalism, successfully defending their ship against a numerically superior force. The classified cargo remained secure and was ultimately delivered without compromise. The Navy SEAL team completed its mission without casualties, having played a decisive role in preventing the initial seizure attempt. Strategically, the operation represented a decisive demonstration of U.S. naval dominance. It showcased the ability of American forces to respond instantly, escalate decisively, and coordinate seamlessly across surface, air, and command elements. More importantly, it reinforced a long-standing principle of U.S. maritime policy. Freedom of navigation in international waters will be defended, and any attempt to seize American vessels or personnel will result in overwhelming consequences. As calm gradually returned to the waters of the Persian Gulf, the outcome was clear. What began as an attempted boarding of a single patrol ship ended with the destruction of an entire regional naval capability. The USS Tempest sailed on safely, its mission accomplished, while Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy in that sector was left in ruins. The operation stood as a stark warning. Any future attempt to challenge U.S. naval authority at sea